The morning sun cast a golden light across the crystal halls of the Dragon Emperor's citadel. The towering pillars reflected the warm glow, making the space feel alive and magical. Dragon Emperor Kale walked slowly, his eyes scanning every corner. His long, dark robes moved with him, and the soft clink of his jeweled staff echoed through the hall. Kale was known for his sharp eyes and careful nature, and today was no different. As he passed the rows of human servants performing their daily chores, his gaze fell on a young maid. Lily was small and quiet, her brown hair tied back neatly. She moved quickly but carefully, carrying trays of food and cleaning supplies. Kale's eyes lingered on her arms. There were faint bruises, soft purples and blues that told a story of recent pain. Something inside Kale stirred, a mix of curiosity and concern. He stopped walking, standing still as if the world around him had paused. No one dared approach him when he was focused. Lily did not notice him at first. She was concentrating on her work, unaware of the Emperor's gaze. Kale could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands trembled slightly when she lifted a heavy tray. These small details spoke volumes. Kale's mind raced. Why would a human maid have bruises in his palace? His rule was strict but fair, and he believed in protecting all who served under him. He knew the guards were strong and disciplined, but this didn't look like normal accidents. Something was wrong, and Kale's instincts told him to pay attention. He turned slightly, keeping Lily in view but making sure no one noticed his interest. Marcus, his trusted aide, was nearby, taking notes on the palace schedule. Kale nodded to him subtly, signaling him to watch as well. Marcus understood immediately, his sharp eyes following Lily and the guards around her. Lily carried a basket of cleaning supplies down a long hallway. One of the guards, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, walked past her. He said nothing, but Kale noticed the slight push of her shoulder as he passed. Lily winced and the basket tilted. Kale's frown deepened. This was no simple accident. The guard's actions were deliberate, but why? What purpose did it serve to harm someone so small and quiet? Kale decided he needed more information. He could not act on a single observation, but he also could not ignore what he had seen. The palace was full of secrets, and not all of them were good. He needed to be careful, patient, and precise. If he confronted the guards too early, the truth might be hidden again. He continued walking, his long shadow stretching across the polished floors. Lily moved to another section, dusting and arranging objects carefully. She was thorough, taking pride in her work despite the pain. Kale admired her dedication but was troubled by the silent suffering he witnessed. It was unfair and it went against everything he believed in as a ruler. Kale's thoughts turned to his own people. Dragons were strong and proud, but humans were vulnerable in this world. It was his duty to protect them, to ensure that no harm came to those who served honestly and faithfully. The bruises on Lily's arms were more than just marks. They were a signal that something deeper was happening within the walls of his citadel. He stopped at the end of the hall, watching Lily pause for a moment. She pressed her hand gently against her arm, as if trying to soothe the pain. Kale's heart tightened. He could not allow this to continue. Yet, he also knew that the palace had rules, and he had to find the truth without causing panic or rebellion among his guards. Marcus approached quietly, lowering his voice. "Your Majesty, shall I begin discreet inquiries?" Kale nodded. "Yes, but do it carefully. Watch, observe, and gather details. Do not alert anyone that we are concerned." Marcus bowed and moved away silently, blending into the hall. Kale turned his attention back to Lily. She resumed her work, unaware that she was being watched by the Emperor himself. Kale studied her movements, noting the small flinches and pauses that revealed her discomfort. He sighed softly, feeling a mixture of frustration and determination. This was not just a small issue. It was a challenge to his leadership and the safety of those under his care. Kale had faced enemies before, but protecting the innocent within his own palace was a test of a different kind. The sun climbed higher, filling the halls with light. Kale remained in his place, observing silently, making mental notes, and planning his next steps. He would get to the bottom of this mystery for Lily, for the humans, and for the integrity of his rule. The Dragon Emperor's eyes were sharp, and no injustice could hide from them for long. Lily moved quietly through the lower halls of the citadel, carrying a small basket of linens. Her steps were careful, each foot placed deliberately on the polished floor. She glanced around nervously, making sure no one was watching too closely. The bruises on her arms throbbed softly, a constant reminder of the rough handling she had endured the day before. She had tried to hide them, but they were now impossible to conceal completely. She remembered the guards' faces clearly. The tall one with the scar had been the worst, pushing her roughly as she carried heavy trays. Others had laughed quietly, pretending to be helpful, but only making her tasks harder. Lily had always tried to do her work without complaint, hoping that no one would notice her pain, but it was growing harder with each passing day. In a quiet corner, Lily paused to straighten a pile of cloths. Her hand brushed against a bruise, and she flinched. A soft sound escaped her lips, almost a whisper. Unseen by her, Dragon Emperor Kale watched from the upper balcony. He had taken a quiet walk to observe the lower halls and had spotted her again. The sight of her pain stayed with him, and he could not ignore it. Kale's mind was a storm of thoughts. He knew the guards were loyal, but some had been showing troubling behavior towards human staff. He remembered Marcus's words from earlier, advising caution. Acting too quickly might alert the wrong people, but ignoring the signs was equally dangerous. Kale had to find a careful balance. Lily continued her tasks, dusting and carrying items from one room to another. Despite the pain, she worked diligently, not wanting to draw attention. Her small acts of resilience did not go unnoticed. Kale admired her strength, realizing that her quiet courage spoke louder than words. He could see that she bore her suffering with dignity, refusing to give the guards the satisfaction of seeing her falter. Meanwhile, Marcus moved silently along the hallways, keeping an eye on the guards. He noted their interactions with Lily, taking care to remain unseen. There was a pattern, subtle but clear. Certain guards were always nearby when Lily worked, and they were the ones responsible for most of her bruises. The others seemed unaware or unwilling to intervene, either out of fear or indifference. Marcus knew this information would be important for Kale, who would need a clear picture before acting. As Lily bent to pick up a fallen cloth, one of the guards approached. He did not speak but gave her a sharp nudge. The basket wobbled, and a few items fell to the floor. Lily's breath caught, and she pressed her hand against her arm instinctively. Kale felt a surge of anger, but he remained silent, watching carefully. He understood that direct confrontation now could make things worse for Lily. Patience was required. Lily finished her chores and moved toward the small garden within the citadel. This was a place she often went when she needed a moment of peace. She tended the plants gently, her hands careful not to damage the delicate flowers. As she worked, she thought about the day ahead and the challenges she would face. She knew she could not avoid the guards completely, but she also hoped that someone in authority might notice her struggles. Kale followed at a distance, hidden by the shadows of the balcony. He observed Lily's movements, noting the careful way she navigated the halls and gardens. Her resilience was impressive, but Kale knew that resilience alone could not protect her from harm. He needed to uncover the truth behind the guards' behavior and ensure that the palace was a safe place for all human staff. By the afternoon, Lily sat quietly in the garden, resting her arms and watching the sunlight dance across the leaves. Kale descended to a hidden area nearby, still out of sight. He and Marcus exchanged a brief look, communicating silently that they would continue to monitor the situation. The hidden pain of a single human maid had opened Kale's eyes to a deeper problem within his palace, one that required careful attention and decisive action. Kale spent the evening reviewing what he had seen during the day. The crystal halls were quiet now, the glow of lanterns reflecting softly on the polished floors. He stood on the balcony, looking down at the lower halls, imagining Lily moving through them. The bruises on her arms had stayed in his mind, a silent question he could not ignore. Marcus approached quietly, carrying a small tablet with notes from his observations. He spoke in a low voice, careful not to disturb the calm of the night. "Your Majesty, I have recorded the patterns we discussed. The guards assigned to the human quarters act in ways that suggest intentional harm. Lily is most affected." Kale nodded, absorbing the information. "We must proceed carefully. If we confront them too early, they may hide their actions or shift the blame. We need to know the full extent of what is happening." The next morning, Kale observed the palace staff as they moved through their routines. He paid close attention to the guards who had been troubling Lily. They seemed ordinary to an outside observer, but Kale noticed small gestures, harsh touches, sharp words whispered too quietly to be heard by others. These details confirmed his suspicions. Lily moved through her chores with quiet efficiency, unaware of the Emperor's watchful eyes. She paused occasionally, massaging her sore arms, but continued her work with determination. Kale admired her courage and resolve. She endured so much silently, yet she never lost her dignity or her careful attention to her tasks. Kale and Marcus began planning a subtle investigation. They would gather information without alerting the guards. Marcus was to follow the guards discreetly, noting any interactions with Lily or other human staff. Kale would observe from hidden vantage points, recording the actions of those who seemed most likely to cause harm. Throughout the day, patterns emerged. Certain guards always appeared near Lily's work area, while others maintained distance. The timing of their actions was consistent, suggesting premeditation rather than random accidents. Kale's mind worked quickly, piecing together the behavior into a clear picture. He realized this was not simply about one maid but about a small group of guards attempting to assert control over the human staff. Lily, meanwhile, continued to move through her duties with careful precision. She paused only briefly to tend a minor spill, bending gracefully and quietly. Even in her suffering, she showed remarkable resilience. Kale could see that she bore the pain without complaint, a testament to her inner strength. By evening, Kale and Marcus had enough information to understand the situation more clearly. The guards' actions were deliberate, and they were part of a small faction with selfish motives. Kale's next step would require careful planning. He could not act impulsively. The safety of Lily and the other human staff depended on his wisdom and patience. Kale reflected on the responsibilities of leadership. Protecting his people, both dragon and human, required vigilance and strategy. He could not allow injustice to thrive under his watch. The hidden pain of one maid had revealed a larger issue, one that needed to be addressed with careful thought and decisive action. Kale resolved to continue his quiet investigation, determined to uncover the full truth and restore safety to his palace. The next morning, Kale summoned the palace guards to a private chamber. The room was large, with high ceilings and softly glowing crystal lights. The guards entered, their expressions cautious. They knew the Dragon Emperor's gaze could read even the smallest thoughts. Kale stood at the center, his robes flowing around him. His eyes met each guard's in turn, calm yet piercing. "I have noticed certain behaviors within the palace," he said softly. "Behaviors that cause harm to those who serve diligently. I want to understand what is happening." The guards shifted uneasily. They had not expected to be addressed directly by the Emperor. A few glanced at each other, unsure of what to say. The tension in the room was thick, but Kale remained calm, his presence commanding respect. One of the taller guards, with a scar across his cheek, spoke hesitantly. "Your Majesty, we follow orders and protect the palace. We never intend to harm anyone." Kale nodded slowly. "Intentions can be hidden, but actions cannot. I have observed how some of you interact with the human staff. Certain patterns suggest harm, whether deliberate or not. It is important that I understand the truth." Another guard, smaller and younger, shifted uncomfortably. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Some of us, we have been strict, yes, but it is only to maintain discipline. We do not wish to hurt anyone." Kale listened carefully, noting the words and the hesitation. There was truth mixed with fear. The guards were aware that their actions might be judged, but some had been careless enough to allow their intentions to cause real harm. Kale's eyes softened slightly as he continued. Discipline is necessary, but cruelty is not. The humans in this palace serve with loyalty and courage. They deserve respect and protection. I will not allow harm to continue unnoticed. I need your honesty, without fear or deception. The room fell silent. The guards knew that the Dragon Emperor could see through lies, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on them. Some lowered their eyes, ashamed. Others straightened, ready to speak the truth. One guard finally admitted, "Your Majesty, a few of us, we acted harshly. We thought we were teaching lessons, but we crossed the line. Lily and others, they have suffered. We are sorry." Kale's gaze remained steady. Acknowledgement is the first step. There will be consequences for those who caused harm, but the palace must also learn from this. Discipline must be fair and just, not cruel. You will help me ensure this going forward. The guards nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of the Emperor's words. Kale's calm authority and measured approach had revealed the truth without causing panic or rebellion. He knew that the palace could now move toward a safer, fairer environment for all human staff. As the guards left the chamber, Kale turned to Marcus, who had observed quietly from the corner. The truth is now clear. We must act wisely to restore trust and protect those who serve us faithfully. Marcus bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty. We will follow your plan carefully and ensure that no one suffers again in silence." Kale nodded, feeling a sense of resolve. The palace had faced a challenge, but with careful observation, patience, and measured confrontation, the Dragon Emperor had uncovered the truth. The safety of his people, human and dragon alike, depended on the next steps, and Kale was ready to lead with wisdom and justice. Lily was finishing her chores in the afternoon sunlight when Kale quietly entered the garden. He kept his distance, observing her with care. Her hands were gentle as she tended the flowers, but the bruises on her arms were still visible. The Dragon Emperor's heart tightened at the sight. Kale called Marcus to his side, speaking softly so that Lily would not hear. "It is time. She must know that the palace will protect her. We cannot allow fear to rule her days any longer." Marcus nodded and stepped back to give Kale space. The Emperor approached Lily, careful not to startle her. "Lily," he said gently, his voice carrying authority but also kindness. She looked up, her eyes wide and uncertain. She had never been called to the Dragon Emperor before, and her heart raced. Kale gestured for her to sit on a nearby bench. She hesitated but obeyed. "I have seen the pain you endure," he said. "The bruises, the rough treatment by some guards. It will not continue. You are safe here." Lily blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. "Why, Your Majesty?" she stammered. I did not want to trouble anyone. I only wanted to do my work." Kale shook his head slightly. "No one should suffer in silence. Courage is not only in enduring pain but in allowing help to reach you. I want you to tell me everything that has happened. You have my word that no harm will come to you for speaking the truth." Her voice trembled, but Lily began to speak. She told him about the rough handling, the whispered threats, and the small faction of guards who took pleasure in making human staff suffer. Kale listened without interruption, his gaze steady, showing her that she was believed and that her words mattered. When she finished, Kale's expression softened but his resolve strengthened. "Thank you for your honesty," he said. "You have shown bravery in telling the truth. I will ensure that these guards face the consequences for their actions, and that the palace becomes a place where all who serve are treated with respect." Lily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The fear that had followed her each day began to fade. She looked at Kale with gratitude and relief. I cannot thank you enough, Your Majesty," she said quietly. Kale nodded. "Your courage is its own reward. You have reminded me that even in a palace of dragons, human lives matter greatly. This is a lesson to all of us." Later, Kale met with Marcus to plan the next steps. The guards who had caused harm would be disciplined and reassigned, while oversight of human staff would be increased. The Emperor wanted to ensure that no one would suffer again under his rule. As the day ended, Lily continued her work with a renewed sense of safety. The bruises on her arms would heal, and more importantly, the fear that had once shadowed her every action was gone. Kale watched from a distance, satisfied that justice was beginning to take its place, and that the bond between humans and dragons in his palace had grown stronger. Kale spent the next morning planning the palace reforms with Marcus. The crystal halls reflected the early sunlight, giving the space a serene and focused atmosphere. Kale knew that action was needed, but it had to be careful and precise. He wanted to protect the human staff and restore fairness without creating chaos. Marcus laid out the notes from their observations. "Your Majesty, the guards responsible for mistreatment have been identified. Some were driven by pride, others by fear. A plan for reassignment and oversight will prevent further harm." Kale nodded thoughtfully. "We must act in a way that teaches discipline and justice, not fear. These guards will face consequences, but we must also guide the others toward proper behavior." The first step was to reassign the most problematic guards to other duties away from human staff. Kale believed that removing the source of harm was crucial. Marcus coordinated the reassignments discreetly, ensuring that the transition would be smooth and without panic. Kale watched the changes with keen eyes, making notes on the behavior of all involved. Next, Kale implemented increased oversight for the human quarters. Trusted dragon aides were placed nearby to monitor interactions without interfering with daily routines. Kale wanted to ensure safety while giving human staff the freedom to work without fear. Lily and others noticed the subtle changes, feeling more secure and valued in their roles. Kale also held private meetings with the remaining guards. He spoke calmly, emphasizing the importance of respect and fairness. "Discipline is necessary, but it must never cross the line into cruelty," he told them. "The humans in this palace serve faithfully and deserve honor and protection. Your actions must reflect this truth." The guards listened carefully, some nodding, others reflecting silently. Kale's presence and words carried authority but also fairness, and the message was clear. Injustice would no longer be tolerated. Lily, unaware of the detailed planning behind the scenes, noticed the changes in the guards' behavior. They were less harsh, more attentive, and careful not to cause harm. She felt safer and more confident in her work, a small smile appearing on her face as she completed her chores. The sense of relief and trust began to spread among other human staff as well. Kale and Marcus monitored progress throughout the day, noting improvements and any areas needing further attention. They moved quietly through the halls, always observing without disturbing the balance of the palace. Kale felt a sense of satisfaction as he saw the positive changes taking effect, knowing that the reforms would strengthen the palace's harmony. By evening, the palace felt different. The atmosphere was calmer, the air lighter, and the human staff more confident. Kale reflected on the importance of careful planning and thoughtful action. Protecting the vulnerable and maintaining order required wisdom and patience. The steps taken today were small but vital, ensuring that fairness and justice would remain at the heart of his rule. Days passed, and the palace began to feel safer for the human staff. The guards who had caused harm were disciplined and reassigned, their positions replaced by more trustworthy aides. Lily noticed the difference immediately. She moved through her duties with a lighter heart, her movements no longer shadowed by fear or caution. Kale observed quietly from a distance, pleased with the results. The changes were subtle but effective. The human staff began to work with confidence, no longer hiding bruises or enduring pain silently. Trust was returning to the palace, and Kale understood that this was the true measure of his leadership. Lily paused in the garden one afternoon, brushing her hands against the soft petals of the flowers she tended. She looked up and saw Kale standing nearby, his gaze warm and protective. He smiled slightly, a gesture that reassured her more than words ever could. "Your Majesty," she said softly, bowing slightly. "I feel safer now. Thank you for everything." Kale nodded. "Your courage and honesty have reminded me of the value of every life in this palace. You and the other human staff deserve respect and protection. This is only the beginning. We will continue to ensure that all serve in safety and harmony." Marcus, observing from a discreet distance, took notes on the interactions. The reforms were working, but Cale knew it was important to maintain vigilance. The palace needed consistent oversight to ensure that no one could harm others without consequence. The remaining guards adjusted to the new expectations. They treated human staff with fairness and care, understanding that cruelty would not be tolerated. Some guards reflected quietly, realizing the importance of compassion alongside discipline. Cale's presence, guidance, and authority had shifted the culture of the palace subtly but effectively. Lily returned to her duties, now more confident than ever. She carried trays with ease, dusted rooms without worry, and even helped other human staff navigate the halls safely. Her courage and resilience inspired others, showing that honesty and bravery could bring about real change. Cale watched from a balcony as the palace staff moved through their routines. A sense of pride and satisfaction filled him. Harmony was returning, and the bond between dragons and humans was growing stronger. The small steps of observation, investigation, and careful action had created a safer and more just environment. By evening, the citadel glowed in the soft light of lanterns. Lily paused to rest, feeling the peace that had begun to fill the palace. Cale remained in the shadows, quietly ensuring that the reforms continued to hold. The safety and trust of his people, both human and dragon, had been restored, and Cale knew that vigilance and care would continue to guide his rule. The citadel was quiet in the early morning light. Dragon Emperor Cale stood on the balcony, gazing at the horizon. The crystal halls below shimmered softly, reflecting the first rays of the sun. The palace was calm, and the staff moved through their duties with confidence and ease. Cale felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Lily worked in the garden, her hands careful as she tended the flowers. The bruises on her arms had faded, but more importantly, the fear that had once shadowed her every action was gone. She moved freely, with a smile that reflected her newfound confidence and trust in the palace's leadership. Cale reflected on the events of the past days. The hidden pain of one human maid had revealed deeper issues within the palace. Observation, patience, and measured action had allowed him to uncover the truth, discipline the guilty, and restore harmony. The reforms had worked, and the palace was now a safer, fairer place for all. Marcus approached quietly, bowing respectfully. "Your Majesty, the staff respond well to the changes. Trust is returning, and the palace feels more unified." Cale nodded. "Yes, this is a reminder that leadership is not just about strength or authority. It is about vigilance, fairness, and empathy. Every life matters, and every injustice must be addressed." Lily glanced up and saw Cale on the balcony. She waved softly, and he nodded in return. In that small gesture, a bond of trust and mutual respect was sealed between dragon and human. It was a sign that the palace had become a place where all could serve without fear, and where courage and honesty were rewarded. The guards who had once caused harm had adjusted to the new expectations. Discipline and fairness guided their actions, and the atmosphere of the palace shifted from one of quiet tension to one of harmony. The human staff felt valued, and the dragons upheld their promise to protect all who served faithfully. Cale continued to watch over the palace, knowing that vigilance was an ongoing duty. He understood that leadership required attention to both small and large matters, and that the well-being of every individual reflected the strength and honor of the ruler. The lessons learned from Lily's courage would guide his decisions for years to come. As the sun climbed higher, Cale remained on the balcony, observing his realm with a sense of peace and determination. The citadel thrived under his care, a symbol of unity and respect between dragons and humans. The palace was no longer just a place of power. It was a sanctuary where courage, honesty, and justice shaped every day. With a final glance at the gardens below, Cale turned back to his chamber, ready to continue his duties. He carried with him the reminder that even the smallest voices mattered, and that protecting the vulnerable was the truest test of a great ruler. The citadel stood as a beacon of fairness and harmony, where every life, dragon or human, was valued and respected.